Hello, America, and welcome back to another episode of To Hear Me Tell It, the life and times of Jerry Daniels. When you've had your daily dose of today's craziness, dealing with all them Karens out there, ride shotgun with old JD as he goes back and recounts the life and times of growing up in the South during the 60s and 70s. I believe we were called baby boomers. Stories that you will say, yep, I done that, but I ain't gonna tell my kids, and I ain't never told my spouse. But whatever the truth be, it will be this, to hear me tell it.
Hello, folks. Welcome to, yet another episode of To Hear Me Tell It. Welcome each and all. The whopping, I think it's down less than 20, but it doesn't matter. But the folks who do listen, I appreciate y'all, man. Fall is in the air, but then it's not. We had I call it a tease of fall a couple of weeks ago. And then we went back to fall, summer. I don't know what it is. The temperature's not really that bad. And today I think the high is going to be like 81 or something, maybe 79. But boy, the air is saturated. It is humid. Woo, son, is it humid. Again, thank y'all for watching. I appreciate it, man. I'm humbled by the few that do watch. Brett Owens called me the other day and he said, "Hey, man, where's your dadgum podcast?" I said, "I know, Brett, I'm behind." And I'm surprised Joe Stitka ain't already sent me a dadgum text, which I appreciate, asking where it is. But a little busy this morning doing some other stuff. I had some catching up to do on my drone company, and I had to fool with the chickens. So I'm going to be reading some stuff on this because I hope y'all enjoy what I've been looking at, but I'm going to be reading over there. So there's a screen over there, and I'm going to be looking at it. But anyway, let me get situated here. And I started later this morning because goldenrod is blooming, and it makes my throat tickle, or my windpipe, my esophagus, my trachea, whatever you call it. It makes it not esophagus, that's where your food goes, bronchial, or the trachea, makes it tickle. So, and then I start doing which I did. Y'all remember that last year. Anyway, all right. A couple of things I want to talk about before I get into the meat and potatoes section, and these are just some highlights. I found an interesting article. Let me get back over here and find it. But an interesting article about a woman named Katie Porter. Now, I'd never heard of Katie Porter. Never heard of her. Don't care. After I read her bio and read all the stuff about her, that's all I need to know. But there's a gal named Katie Porter, and she's in the news because she did an interview. I'm looking here. But she did an interview with a reporter, an investigative reporter, and it didn't go well. And the reason it didn't go well is because Miss Katie got her back up, and she thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. Just watch some videos and stuff like that. Let me turn this thing off. I don't know why this is doing this. But if you watch some of her videos, you'll see she really does. She thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. And I read her entire bio. Imagine this. Yale and Harvard is in her bio. Wow, that's a shocker. So this old gal, it says, here's the headline: controversial Democrat abruptly ends bonkers interview after repeatedly berated reporter with "I don't care." So that was her comeback to the reporter. I don't care. I don't care. So the reporter kept asking her questions, and then she would ask follow-up questions. Well, it was apparent to me, and quite easy. It was quite easy to see that for the reporter to even get this interview with I'm going to keep it clean because my wife gets on me pretty bad. I want to say a lot of stuff. Let's just call Miss Katie a fire plug in a dress. So the little fire plug in the dress, Miss Katie, evidently had screened all the questions, but what she didn't like the fact of is the investigative reporter was asking questions on her list. She was reading the list, but then she would read just, ad lib, and then follow-up question, where fire plug in the dress, Miss Katie, she didn't want that. She wanted just, you ask me those questions that I agreed to, and then we'll keep it at that. That ain't what happened. So it blew up. So the question was, what do you say? This is a reporter that was asking this. So and let me see if I can get the reporter's name. I don't see that. Anyway, But I was hoping I'd find that damn reporter's name. It doesn't matter. All right, so the follow-up question was, and she's asking this of Fireplug Katie, is what do you say to the 40% of California voters who you will need in order to win? And I guess this is a primary, who voted for Donald Trump. And Porter was asked by CBS California's, I guess this is her, Julie Watts, during a segment on the controversial redistricting effort. So, and if you go back and read some of how Miss Fireplug Katie got in office, amazing this, it was because of redistricting. So they did some redistricting in California, and then she got her another seat. So, but just go read on her. And yeah, Katie Porter. Yeah, she's a real winner. But here's what I want to show. And if you look, I'm trying to think where it's going to be, right here. Here's a picture of her. And this picture was taken January the 7th, 2023. And it's at the House. And they were actually voting. They were looking to elect the Speaker of the House on an early Saturday morning. But here she is. Here's look at that, man. Woo-hoo, check her out. So there is the Representative Katie Porter, Democrat from California. And she's showing a book to the Representative Sean Casten, a Democrat from Illinois. During the vote, look at the title of the book. This right here is just a snapshot, but this is a poster child of the Democratic Party. This is a poster child. She's sitting in the House floor. She's reading a book, and she's showing the book. She knows there's cameras in the room. She knows that. And I'm going to have to say what this says, but the book says, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Could you imagine that? No class, no moral ethics whatsoever. This right here is ghetto trailer trash dog crap. What old Biden say? Dog pony or some crap? Anyway, look at the picture of her. She's trash. She's trash. But yet because she went to Yale and she went to Harvard and all this kind of crap, and then she worked as an intern, read her bio. Girl ain't never had a damn job in her life. Nope. Grew up as a farmer in Iowa. Yeah. Okay. I get it. All right. So anyway, I just want to highlight Katie Porter's in the news because she couldn't take questions, and she just got up and took the mic off and got all bitchy and whiny. And like, well, I'm not doing this. I'm like, yeah, she thinks she's all that in a bag of chips, and she ain't nothing but a damn rusty ass fire plug in a dress. So, but you know what? This is indicative of today's climate. Idiots will vote for her. Why? Because dark money wants people like that in office. Why? Because they're disruptive. That's what it is. That's all it is. All right. So that's that right there. And then I read an article, and I know the folks in Georgia are going to know about this, but apparently Saturday night, let me see, what is that? Saturday night, 4 October, Fort Valley State College had their homecoming, and it didn't go well. And they got beat. And they got beat by some middle state university. I don't know who it was, but it doesn't matter. Fort Valley State lost on their homecoming game, and they got beat 18-14. NCAA Division II. I didn't know there was such thing. And guess what? I don't care. But a fight broke out, and I watched the video. And I think 20 players were suspended. And I don't know how far they were suspended, but 20 players were supposedly suspended, and both the coaches were suspended. And my understanding is, this could be wrong, but 9 of those 20 were on Fort Valley State's roster. But I watched it, and this is another example of the times. And I watched this, and it looked like something you'd see in a mall, a bowling alley, a skating rink, a cruise ship, a beach party, a water park, whatever. It's all the same culture. And it looked like a bunch of frickin' wild animals. It was, and as a matter of fact, the article said melee. I'm like, seriously? Where's the civil obedience for somebody to control their behavior? And they all had something in common, and it wasn't football. So, all right, Fort Valley State, good on you and whoever you were playing. Y'all just showing your character, buddy. That's all I can say. All right. Hey, I got a joke for y'all. And I'm trying, I thought about putting a joke in there today, but I read this today and I laughed out loud and I showed my wife, and a lot of stuff I show my wife, Laura, I go, hey, look. And her eyes go. She just rolls her eyes and she looks away. I'm like, you think that was funny? So, matter of fact, I showed her a meme. I think that's what you call it. It was on my phone. I showed it to her, and it was Captain James T. Kirk from the original Star Trek, and he was kissing some woman. Oh, James was smooth, buddy. Y'all know it. If y'all watch the original Star Trek like we did when we grew up, James was smooth, man. And it was always funny because the Starship Enterprise, I'll get to the joke in a minute, but the Starship Enterprise, you know, they went out and I forget all that stuff it said in the front, but, you know, they go out and go above and beyond or something, you know. I can't think of the song, but where no man had ever gone and all this stuff. But every time they encountered some weird stuff too, man. I wanted to say shit, but I didn't. But they encountered some weird stuff. And I mean some weird stuff. And it was right in the 60s was breaking out, and hell, James was a dog, man. He'd sleep with a rattlesnake if he was to hold his head. But I mean, green women, orange women, women with horns sticking out of their damn heads and had tails and slithering forked tongues and all this other kind of crap. And then Spock would do some weird shit, and Doc would do some weird shit, and Scotty would do some weird shit. Anyway, but they encountered some really, really weird stuff. But there was a meme of James Kirk, and he's hugging on it looks like he's kissing, but he's hugging on, and she's in a uniform, so it looks like she's one of the crew members. She's look like she's got crooked eyes, but she's a pretty woman. And she said something to the effect of, my father is going to be really angry with you that you took my virginity. And James Kirk says, I'll tell him that's the last time I'll do that. I showed it to Laura. Laura's like, seriously? I said, well, that's funny. A woman says, my daddy's going to be pissed at you because you took my virginity. And the reply be, well, that'll be the last time I do that. I won't do it anymore. It's funny, y'all. That's freaking funny. All right, so here's the joke. Here's the joke. What's the difference? I got to quit shaking the damn table. I'm sorry. What's the difference between a jaguar and a cougar? What's the difference between a jaguar and a cougar? And here's the difference. A jaguar can capture a damn animal twice its size and carry it, you know, big old jaw. But a jaguar can catch a damn animal twice its weight and carry it up a tree. A cougar, she can capture a male half her age and get him in bed with no resistance. That's amazing. All right, that's funny. You got to admit it's funny. It's not my joke. I read it somewhere, but it's funny. All right. So that being said, here's going to be the gist of it. And I'm probably going to talk about all the stuff later about what is coming out, about the most recent discovery. A little bit of politics here, but the most recent discovery is, and more is going to come out. And we, the American people, this is our country. And those people in D.C. are elected to go up there to serve us. But we're learning that, and I'm going to say the Obama and the Biden's FBI, their Department of Justice, their law people, is that they were knowingly spying, and I didn't say the word wiretap because Democrats are all like, oh, it wasn't wiretap, it was spying. The FBI had a select number of people that they were spying on, and they were researching and going through all their phone records to find out who they were talking to, where they were, when they were talking to them. You know, and Marsha Blackburn is one of them. What's his name? Lindsey Graham, he was one of them. I think Hawley was one of them. I'm not sure about that. But these folks, and I guess the Turning Point USA was in that group too. But get this, y'all. Somebody had to approve this, and I'm going to talk more when I learn more. But here's what we know right now, is that under the Obama and the Biden administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigators were spying on American politicians just looking for something. Just looking for something. And it's just like with Trump and all his cabinet. They weren't investigating a crime. They were looking for something to make a crime. You imagine that? Could you imagine if the law came to your house and said, we're just here to look around? I'm like, what are you looking for? Nothing. We're just going to dig through all your records. We're going to dig through all your closets. We're going to look under your house, under your rugs. We're going to go out in the woods in your backyard. Yeah, you got 30 acres. We're just going to kind of dig around. We're going to look for something. I'm going, what are y'all looking for? We're just looking. So the FBI was spying on U.S. senators. Y'all get that? The FBI was spying on U.S. senators all around right before and after January the 6th. And they're looking for something. You know, and it's like, well, how bad is that? Well, it's real bad because you know what? If you find something that's not favorable, you can use it to blackmail them. Yeah. We all got kinks on our armor. Ain't nobody squeaky clean. I ain't, you ain't, nobody squeaky clean. None of us. Y'all excuse me. So anyway, I had a bowl of cereal this morning. I had a bowl of total cereal with fresh blueberries. And I keep doing this because I should have brushed my damn teeth right after I ate. I brushed them this morning, then I ate. Like, what makes sense of that didn't. So anyway, I put homemade fresh granola that a friend of ours made and gave it to us. And man, I got this funny taste in my mouth, and I got these pieces of oats everywhere. I don't know where the hell they're coming from. I thought I ate them all. Yeah, that's TMI, right? I'm going to, how many minutes I'm at? Where I'm at? I'm already at 16 minutes. I'm going to share with y'all. I shared this with Laura this morning, and she even said this. Laura said, she goes, don't tell nobody that. I think this is worthy to tell. And this is a dream I had last night, y'all, and I am not, first of all, you can't make this up. I woke up, I was so damn shaken. I got up and just got a cup of coffee, and I just stared at my coffee cup going, what in the hell did I dream that for? I'm like, seriously? And when I told Laura this morning about my dream, she said, don't tell nobody that. I said, okay. She don't know I'm over here doing this, so she don't know I'm telling y'all. And she said, well, I don't think you should have a piece of pumpkin pie with whipped cream anymore before you go to bed. I'm like, you reckon that's what it was? I don't know, but let me tell y'all something. So I had this dream, and I got to think how to keep it clean because it was weird, y'all. Weird. And if anybody who watches this knows somebody who's one of those dream interpreters, I probably regret saying this. I'd like your take on it. So anybody that's not a dream interpreter, if you just want to give me your take, put it in the, this is obviously you can't do it in the podcast, but those who are watching this on YouTube, put it in your comments. What in the hell could I have been thinking? First of all, I wasn't thinking, I was just dreaming. All right, so here it goes. So y'all know when I was in the U.S. Navy, I was a combat air crewman. So I flew combat air crew and P-3 aircraft, and it was a lot of fun. So my dream is I was with my crew, combat air crew, CAC-1. I was with my crew, and we were on a debt somewhere in some foreign country. And I don't know where, and it's not important, but we were on a debt. And the whole crew, officers and enlisted, we were thrown into this big room was our berthing. And it didn't have bunk beds, it just had racks, just single, depth racks, just racks in the middle of this room. And they were lockers, they were big lockers on the wall, but they were all locked. They were big like wardrobe lockers, but they were all locked. And we had to just put all our stuff, our helmet bag and our sea bag and our big parachute bag that we carried our stuff when we traveled a lot. And, but we had nowhere to put our stuff. So this woman that ran this joint, I confronted her, and there's other women in this dream too, but these are big women. They're tall and they got big facial features, very profound. They were big women. How about that? Like Nordic. I don't know, man. These are big gals. I confronted this woman and I said, "Hey," I'm just paraphrasing, but I said, "We can't get in these lockers." So she pulls out a damn ring of keys. She goes, "Well, I can." And she opens the locker. And it opens up, and there's no curtain rod or there's no rod, a hanging rod in there to hang anything. Not like we had a lot of stuff, but there was no shelves, there was no drawers. It was just a big ass open locker. And I said, "Well, at least we can put our stuff in here and lock it. Where's the key?" She goes, "I got the key." I said, "Well, we need a key so we can put our stuff in each of these lockers." She goes, there is no other keys." I said, "So you got the only key?" She goes, "Yeah." So we'll give it to me, and then, at least we'll put our valuables in here. She goes, "You can't. This is a master key. It opens all the lockers. Not only this room, but the other rooms. This is the master key." I said, "You gonna tell me all these lockers are keyed the same way?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, that doesn't make sense." It didn't make sense. So that was part of the dream. And you know how dreams are. So I don't know what the ending of that conversation was. All I know is the next part of the dream, I'm late and I've been separated somehow, but I'm still in this barrack compound thing. I don't know what it was. But my crew had left, and I knew I had to go flying with them, and I was not with them. I'm thinking, they're gonna leave without me. But they can't leave without me. I'm critical to the mission. So I go downstairs, and I'm talking to two women about getting a ride to the airfield so I can go where the airplane is, and they told me I was sick. And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm sick?" And they told me that I had contracted something and I couldn't go with she told me I couldn't go with my crew. And I'm thinking, "What do you mean I'm sick and I contracted something?" She goes, "Well, you got to get a chest x-ray." I'm thinking, "A chest x-ray? Are you serious?" She goes, "Yeah." So she brings me in this room. Y'all, this is so crazy. She brings me in this room. I'm starting to think about the end. I can't get to it. She brings me in this room, and she tells me I got to get a chest x-ray. And you know how, if you've ever had a chest x-ray, you stand up and somebody gets behind you and they push your shoulder, they roll them forward so that the thing's against your chest. Well, I had to stand up on a stool, and it was like a wall. It was like a wall. And she was behind me, and she was pushing my damn shoulders and trying to touch my shoulders to the wall. And I'm like, "Damn, this hurts." And then she goes, "Well, put your hands up on top of the wall." So the wall came to right about here. And I was trying to put my hands up on the wall and roll my shoulders. And she was going to do this chest x-ray. And then she stopped. She goes, "Oh, wait a minute. We didn't do the injection." I'm thinking, "Injection? What you mean injection?" She goes, and I don't know what she said, but basically she was telling me they had to inject this red dye in me to do the x-ray thing. And I thought, "You got to inject red dye in me?" She goes, "Yeah." I turned around, and the other woman has got this device, and it looks like a syringe, but it's not a syringe. But it's got holes you put your fingers in, but it had this big round thing that you hold, and it centered in two fingers, and it had like a big thing sticking out of it. And I'm thinking, well, that's huge. You can't stick that in the human body. It's not even sharp enough. I mean, it was as big as your thumb. And I thought, what the hell? So she sticks this damn thing into a big bottle. It's a huge bottle. And it is kind of like, the thumb went in there. She flipped it upside down, and she was pumping it. And and the liquid that was in the bottle was going down every time she would pump this thing, which led me to believe she's sucking that whatever that red fluid is down in this thing she's got in her hand. And she empties this bottle. It's about the size of a quart jar. And I'm still just like, the hell, man? You know, that's big. Where's she going to put that? Now, I know what y'all thinking. I'm going to tell you what I was thinking. But that's not the case. So I ain't even got to the meat and potatoes of this damn podcast yet. This is hilarious. Or YouTube channel episode. I have no idea what I'm going to name this. Don't eat pumpkin pie before bed. How about that? So the bottle's empty and she's got this thing. Well, then she takes a damn balloon. She takes a balloon and she rolls it over that nipple thing. And then she starts pumping that thing. She's pumping it. You know, I can't put my hands on the screen. So she's pumping that freaking thing. And the balloon starts to inflate with this red liquid. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm thinking, hell, there wasn't that much red fluid in that thing. The balloon's bigger than the damn jar was when it started. Y'all, this is where it gets weird. And if there's any ladies listening to this, just roll your eyes like Laura did this morning when I told her. Because this is the dream. Y'all, I'm embarrassed to share this. I hope this is no reflection upon me. And this surely can't be some crap. This is not like something I think about. So the woman takes that thing off and she's got this balloon and she hands it to the other woman who's been trying to roll my shoulders against that damn wall to do the x-ray. Y'all, she pulls her shirt up and she's got 3 boobs. And one of them, maybe I watched that movie with, what was it called? I don't know. Had Arnold Schwarzenegger in it about the Mars. I forget the name of that too. But she pulls her shirt up and she's got 3 boobs. And one of them is all like a pancake on a hinge, flat. And I'm like, man, this is the weirdest. I don't think I've ever had a dream this weird in my life. And she takes that balloon and she sticks it to it. And all of a sudden, the fluid transfers out of that bag into her breast. And then she puts her arm up. She's got all this matty red hair hanging under her armpits with all these like big freaking moles. You know how you see moles on people's faces or on their legs? They're everywhere. And I thought, my gosh. And then she holds her boob and she goes, here, you got to suck it out of here. That's what she told me. And I said, that ain't happening. And I woke up. I got up, went and got a cup of coffee. Yep. Laura, I told them. You told me not to tell them, but I told them. So, anyway. All right. Hell, it's at 27 minutes. All right, so now let me try to get to the meat and potatoes of that. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me try to get the meat and potatoes. I'm gonna move this screen over here so I'm not jumping all over the place. But I'm gonna read something, and what I'm gonna read is some history. And Joe Stitka loves history, and I love history. But all the crap, and I'll say it, crap, unrest, whatever you want to call it, chaos that's going on in particular Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois. We the people elected Donald Trump to do a job, and it's driving these people crazy because he's a politician that actually said, "I'm going to do what I told the people I was going to do," and we've got both the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago. These guys, man, I tell you what. Yes, I'll say it. They're inciting violence, is what they are. They're inciting violence. They are. That's my opinion, my damn opinion. I can say what I want. But in my opinion, they're inciting violence and they're encouraging people to be violent. And they're using words like civil war. That's what they're using. Terms like civil war. And I posted, gosh, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago on Facebook, I posted something to the effect of maybe people need to read their history because, you know, it was the Democrats who waged war to keep their ability to enslave a people in this nation. It was the Democrats who did that. And now, here we are, and that was in the 1860s. So here we are in 2025. People don't read their history because, again, we have Democrats who are looking to maintain power by enslaving others. Now, they don't have slaves on a plantation doing manual labor. They have social slaves. They have people that keep them in power because they're social slaves is what they are. Why? Because they're dependent upon them for everything. Everything. Housing, food, you name it. Everything. And again, here we are. We have the Democratic Party looking to retain their power and their power base by enslaving people. So I got to thinking about that, and all this going on. So I'm going to read to y'all a little history. And this is the history of Fort Sumter. Interesting. Because we all know those who went to high school or studied in college and whatnot, Fort Sumter, the shot that was heard around the world. It was what they say kicked off the Civil War. And it was in April, I think, 1861. Let me find it. Yeah, April the 12th, I think it was, is when it started. Let me find that. Yep, I was right. April the 12th, 1861. So let me read to y'all. I'm just going to read to you. Keep this in mind, and then we'll kind of talk about, I guess, the similarities of it. So this is right off of a America Battlefield Trust, battlefields.org website, the history of Fort Sumter, and it even says the first shots of the Civil War. All right, so it says, quote, I'm just reading, few sites are more synonymous with the American Civil War than Fort Sumter. Named for the Revolutionary War hero Thomas Sumter. Did y'all know that? Fort Sumter was named after a Revolutionary War hero, Thomas Sumter. The United States government began construction of Fort Sumter actually in 1829. It was part of the third system fortifications built to defend the American coastline from foreign attackers. The site selected was a sandbar near the entrance to Charleston Harbor that played an important role in the 1776 Battle of Sullivan's Islands. British ships ran aground on the sandbar during the battle, taking them out of action, which helped lead to the Patriots' victory there. The man-made island was created on that sandbar. So a man-made island was created on that particular sandbar. 70,000 tons of granite was used to create the island and the fort that was built on top of it. Now, y'all just think about this. Think about this. We're talking about something that was constructed in 1829, and somebody moved, how much did I say? 70,000 tons. Not 70,000 pounds. 70,000 tons of granite was used to create the island that they built Fort Sumter on. By April of 1861, the fort was still under construction and was an imposing fortress in the harbor. It was designed to house 650 men and 135 cannons. It had 5-foot thick brick walls that towered 50 feet high with 3 levels of artillery emplacements. Inside were wooden officers' quarters, enlisted men's barracks, and a brick powder magazine. The range of the artillery at that time being approximately 1 mile, the cannons from Sumter and Moultrie commanded the entrance to the harbor. On December the 20th, y'all, 1860, South Carolina seceded from the United States following Abraham Lincoln's election as President of the United States. So just stop right there. Man, I don't have any water. Crap. So December the 20th, 1860, boom, South Carolina succeeds from the Union. Why? Because Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, was elected. And he ran on the fact, I'm going to end slavery. Yep. So what happens? We have a state who's championed states' rights against the federal government And it was politically based because Lincoln was a Republican and they didn't like his ideals. And they succeeded. Now, at that time, the only federal troops in Charleston Harbor were about 85 men under the command of a guy named Major Robert Anderson was his name. And they were stationed actually at Fort Moultrie. Now, feeling like he was in an indefensible position because they knew the sabers were rattling. Anderson, on December the 26th, this is 6 days after South Carolina seceded from the Union, Anderson makes a decision. He makes a decision. Now, keep in mind now, he's got about 85 men, and he's over at Fort Moultrie, and Fort Sumter is really not completed yet, but it was almost done. So he makes a decision to spike the cannon at Moultrie, burn the carriages, and basically, so he ruined the cannons, burned all the carriages, and basically in the dark of the night, he took everything, all their supplies and all their men, and he moved in the dark of the night by boats over to Fort Sumter. The South Carolina militia heard about it. They were pissed. And the South Carolina militia quickly took over all the other forts in the harbor and began training their artillery at Fort Sumter. So President James Buchanan got word of this, and he attempted to resupply the isolated garrison, and he sent a ship that was called the Star of the West. It's a paddle boat ship, not like the paddle boats in the river. It had the big paddles on the side and sails, and maybe even steam. Well, obviously it was steam because they had paddles. But anyway, maybe sails and steam to power the paddles. But President James Buchanan, he knew that those boys were in rough shape, so he sent a resupply ship to go help them fellers that Anderson took from Moultrie and moved over to Fort Sumter. And the ship again was called the Star of the West to go help them. However, the Citadel military college students, this was not the Confederate States of America. The Citadel military college students that were stationed on Morris Island, they fired on that ship, and the ship was unarmed. It fell back and without returning any fire because it couldn't. And the standoff at the harbor continued, and the ship left. It left. So Anderson and those 85 fellers are left, and their supplies are dwindling. The ship fell back, and again it left. After 6 more deep southern states, they decided we'll succeed with the South or with South Carolina, and they succeeded from the Union. And they then formed the Confederate States of America. Now just keep in mind, we're still in December of 1860. This is all happened in December of 1860. So on March of 1861, all right, so anyway, let me back up some. So let me form that. Yeah. So the 6 other states joined the South Carolina. They succeeded and they created their own government. And they basically, now they have a Confederate States of America, and they basically took charge of all of the Charleston Harbor, all of it, with the exception, obviously, of Fort Sumter. So you got Anderson, 85 guys, and they're dwindling supplies, and they're out there on a man-made island, Fort Sumter. So you figure now, that was December. So January, February, March, who knows what the weather was. So March the 4th, 1861. So December, January, February, March. So roughly 3 months. So about 3 months later, Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated president of the United States. He refused to acknowledge the legitimacy of the state succession or the sovereignty of the Confederate States. It's like I ain't recognizing it. So with Anderson's garrison running low on supplies, he decided to send an armed fleet to resupply Fort Sumter. Yep, this is a Republican. And he says, I ain't recognizing them guys. Kind of like maybe Trump's like, I ain't recognizing that governor of Illinois, what he's doing. So, as the nation watched the tense standoff in Charleston Harbor, Southern diarist Mary Chestnut summed it up. This is her quote. There stands Fort Sumter, and thereby hangs peace or war. Peace or war. In the early mornings, that's her quote, end quote. So let me read it again. So this is what Mary Chestnut, she summed it up. She said in her diarist, there stands Fort Sumter, and thereby hangs peace or war. So in the early morning of April the 12th, 1861, the Confederates give Anderson an ultimatum to evacuate or be fired upon. Anderson replied that he would stay until he ran out of supplies 3 days later. The Confederates informed him that they would open fire. And not reading from this article, but I'm also told that Beauregard, that was the guy that was there for the Confederates, that he went there under, the truce or parley or whatever. He went there on more than one occasion, was very courteous and respectful, say, hey, listen, boys, y'all are out here by yourselves. Y'all ain't got nothing. I'm just paraphrasing. But y'all, we're gonna fire on you. We don't want to, but we're gonna do a melee on your ass. And you might want to just go ahead and hang it up, and we'll give y'all free passage, and y'all can leave. We're going to take the fort. And he was polite and respectful, and I forget, it was a quote, great quote by Anderson back to Beauregard, but he didn't take him up on his offer. So anyway, he said he would stay, and then the Confederates said, well, then we're going to open fire. So at 4:30 a.m. on April the 12th, 1861, 4:30 in the morning, the first shot was fired. And the first shot was actually a 10-inch mortar round that fired, and it was basically to go above Fort, it came from Fort Johnson, but it was to go above Fort Sumter and burst. And that was the signal for everybody else, just start opening fire. And they did. And all hell broke loose. And both sides fired at each other for 34 hours. And finally, what happened was from Fort Johnson and the other fort, and they put some guns out there at Fort Moultrie. They were all firing, and they fired these particular rounds that would start. They were incendiary rounds, and they started fires and whatnot, and they were just beating the crap out of these guys. And Anderson's men, only 85 of them, but they couldn't fight the fires and operate the cannons and defend themselves at the same time. At one point, the mast for the flag was knocked down, and they put it back up, so they still had the American flag flying. Finally, with the buildings and everything was on fire, there was absolutely no prospect of victory. General Anderson decided he would surrender to the Confederates. And Anderson and his men were able to take their flags, and they were able to, I think they went back to New York. And the Deep South Confederate victory was hailed as an important declaration of their independence from the Union. In the North, the firing of Fort Sumter was viewed as an assault on the American Union and rallied thousands to defend the American flag. Yeah. So Lincoln's call for volunteers to invade the South forced the Upper South states to succeed and join the Confederacy as well. So, I read that, and I'm reading all this stuff. So, here we are in the year 2025, and we got the likes of those people in Portland, Oregon, and we got the likes of these two morons in Illinois, the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois. He thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. Both these guys, they're idiots. They're tyrants. They're eager, and they will do anything to stay in power. These people will do anything to stay in power. And how do they do it? They enslave what they call their voting base. And you think about this for a minute. You reckon all the people in Illinois feel like, yeah, this is a worthy cause? Nah. And you know what? There was a lot of people in the Deep South, like my great-grandfather, who fought in the Civil War. He didn't have a choice. It was called conscription. You reckon he had a dog in that fight? No. Why? Because he's just a poor barefooted dirt farmer. He don't own no damn slaves. Hell, he's kind of like a slave himself, And then I look at my granddaddy, And my grandmama had 12 youngins and adopted another one. And you reckon they had a dog in the whole, and we're talking after the Civil War, so we're talking about the 1930s, 1940s. But racism was still alive and well. And who was it done by? The Democrats. And, my uncle Emmett, who was my daddy's oldest brother, not oldest, but he was the older brother above my dad. There was 13 months apart from Uncle Jesse and Uncle Emmett. Uncle Emmett and my daddy. Uncle Emmett was 13 months older than Daddy. And I'm telling you, man, I'm glad because I did some genealogy and reading about my family history. We're talking dirt poor, barefooted, ragged clothes. They didn't have two nickels rubbed together. And they had a little bit of plot of land, and they farmed it. And they shared a mule with another family. And, did my granddaddy have slaves? Hell no. First of all, slavery was abolished. But who worked the farm? They did. And guess what? Talking to my daddy and Uncle Emmett and the rest of them boys, they hated it. They hated it with a passion. None of them growed up and go, oh, I think I'll be a farmer. They hated it. Why? Because they had a mother named Julia May Bars, Daniel, who would whoop their ass if they didn't get behind a damn mule and start plowing. It was as simple as that. If we're going to eat and survive and make it through the winter, you boys are going to work. And you're going to work. If not, I'll beat you with a stick. And that's the way it was. And it got to the point where, and it was I don't know if it was the late 40s or the early 50s. I think it was in the early 50s. But Uncle Emmett and Daddy, this is the story. Uncle Emmett and Daddy were plowing a field one day. And Daddy says it was hot. He said, Jerry, it was the hottest summer of my life. And they're barefooted. They're barefooted plowing with a mule. And he said Emmett would go down one way and then come back, and I stood in the shade. And then he'd take the leather strap off, give it to me, and then I'd plow two rows. I'd plow that way and I'd plow back, and then we would swap. He said, and Emmett was on, this is Daddy's story, Emmett was on the way back. He said he could see him coming. And all of a sudden, he saw him stop. You could tell how he stopped because the dust quit kicking up. And he said, and Daddy was looking, he said, I could see the mule wasn't moving, but Emmett was walking toward me, getting closer. And he said that Uncle Emmett walked up to him and he said, Bob, I'm done. I'm done. And he left. Uncle Emmett hitchhiked to Macon, Georgia, lied about his age and joined the United States Marine Corps. And he left. And my grandmama's stories told, didn't figure it out for like 2 or 3 days later. He was already at Parris Island. So my point being is, I don't believe all the people in Chicago embrace that mayor. He's an idiot. But what is it? I'm for the life of me, I'm trying to rationalize why would somebody fight the federal government to try to come in and help you get your crime under control, get gangs out of your city, get illegal immigrants out of your city, get the drugs off your streets. Why would somebody fight and resist the effort of anybody? But it's Donald Trump. That's the problem. And it's a Republican. That's the problem. But why would they resist? Somebody's trying to say, we're here to help and make your city safer. Nobody, grandmothers or wives or children, nobody wants to walk around in total fear of gang violence, drug, prostitution, human trafficking, all that. And then you look toward the governor and he's like that big jelly donut. I'm like, I ain't never seen him down in the bowels of the damn streets of Chicago where all the real shit's going on. Because he's like, everything's peaceful here, boys. It's all good. It's all good. I don't think so. I don't think it's all good. I don't think it's all good at all. Nope. So, all right. That's all I got. I'm already at 50 minutes, and that's way too long of a podcast. So, I apologize, y'all. Hey, thank y'all for listening. Don't tell too many people that damn weird butt dream I had. Golly, Pete, that still bothers me. It's going to bother me probably for weeks. So, y'all be safe. God bless. Mike Coker, get up, buddy. No, wait. What is it, October? I bet Mike Coker's done moved south already. Yeah, I know he has. Probably so. Bicycle.